Hey guys, it's Chris at Highline Guitars. You're watching another one of my YouTube guitar building videos. If you're new to the channel, welcome. I hope that by the end of this video, I'll have earned the honor and privilege of your subscription. And to everybody who's watching, if you get anything out of this video, I would appreciate it if you would click that thumbs up button. And of course, if you'd like to take your support to the next level, you can visit my eGuitar Plans web store or my Highline Guitars merch store. There's links in the description below, and any purchase you make there is going to help support this channel so that I can keep making guitars and making videos about making guitars. And of course, if you'd like to keep it simple, you can just click the thanks button and leave a small tip in an amount that you think is fair. So what I'm going to be talking about in today's video is I'm going to be installing the frets into my 6-string multi-scale fan fret conical radius fretboard. It's a lot to say. It's a mouthful. However, before I get started with installing the frets, there's one last thing I'd like to do to the fretboard itself, and that is I'd like to bring the surface up to a nice glossy shine. So let's do that, and then we'll come back and start pressing in some frets. Okay, so to install the frets, I'm going to be using my, it's a Harbor Freight arbor press that was modified to accept a fret call, and the fret call itself holds the inserts which match the radius of the fretboard. And this is a conical radius fretboard, so at the heel end it is 16 inches, and it gradually transitions to 10 inches at the nut. So I'm going to have to use a 16-inch radius fret pressing insert, a 14-inch, a 12-inch, and then a 10-inch. So I'll use the 16-inch for the end of it, then I'll switch to the 14th, and then I'll switch to the 12, and then to the 10 down at this end. I'm also going to be using my Hosco fret nippers, and I'll use these to cut the fret wire to length for each fret. And then I have to use a fret tang nipper, and this one's from StewMac. And what this does is it clips off a tiny portion of the tang on each end of the fret wire. And I have to do that because my fret slots are what are known as blind fret slots. They don't go all the way out the edge. They stop short. So you don't see the fret slots on the sides of the fretboard. So I have to clip the tang off since the tang isn't extending all the way to the edge. And that's what that tool is for. And then I'm going to use CA glue. This is Stick Fast Instant CA adhesive, and it's the thin viscosity. And I'm using these tips, which are, they're applicator tips. These are made specifically for the dental industry, but they fit onto the bottle and allow me to deposit just a tiny amount of CA glue into the fret slot. The fret wire that I'm going to be using is from Jescar. It's stainless steel fret wire, and it's 95 thousandths of an inch wide and 47 thousandths of an inch tall. And this is my favorite fret wire. I use this all the time. Now when I purchase it in bulk, so it comes coiled, and that means it already is pre-radiused to 10 inches, which will work great at the nut end of the fretboard. And probably what I'll do is I'll use this with this radius from the 1st to about the 7th or 8th fret. And then beyond that, up to about the 12th fret, I need to flatten out the radius to be closer to 12 inches. And then from about the 12th fret up to probably about, I'd say the 19th fret, somewhere in here, 17th fret maybe, I will go with a 14-inch radius. So I'll have to flatten it out even more. And then to the end of the fretboard, I'll use a 16-inch radius. Now the problem is it's already been radiused to 10 inches, so I have to manually bend the wire to get it flatter, which is a bit of a challenge, especially with stainless steel and at the very ends. But I can get it down quite a bit flatter so that I can use it at the correct radius to match the fretboard. Now the thing is, it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. And the reason it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect is because I am gluing the frets into the slot. So the CA glue is going to hold the fret firmly into the slot so that it conforms to the radius. And plus I'm using the different size fret pressing inserts, the different radius. So that shouldn't be an issue to get an accurate pressing of the frets. So I'm going to try and get this one down to roughly a 14-inch radius. And I can check that with my radius gauge. And it's pretty close. It can be a little bit tighter. That way the tangs will dig in not only straight up and down, but they'll spread out a little bit as you put pressure when it's pressed down in. Now I have the neck sitting in this special caul that I made, and I carved this on my CNC machine. It has a U-shaped channel that conforms to the back contour of the neck, and I have filled it with strips of neoprene as a cushion. So this will support the neck as I place it onto my fret press and press in the frets. You need to support that neck or you'll damage the neck under the pressure that exerts. Now the first thing I'm going to do is cut my frets to length. So I'll sit a fret down, and I like to overhang it from the edge just a little bit. And then I can take my fret nipper and I'll get it right in close there. Still overhanging just slightly. And that's going to be the first fret. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the fret tang nipper, and the way this works is it has a cutting blade here, then it has an insert, and the tool comes with two inserts. And if you look closely, you can see that there's a groove there, and there's actually a groove on each side, and they're different sizes. And you select the insert with the groove that matches the crown of your fret. And then it has this depth stop, which can be adjusted so that you're only removing a specified amount of that tang. So I'll place it in there, and then I will clip off the tang. And it clips it off pretty cleanly. Sometimes it leaves a little bit of residual tang. So I'll do the other side the same exact way. I'll insert it into the tool, and then I'll clip off that little piece of the tang. And then what I like to do is I'll use a diamond fret file. And it does a pretty quick job of removing that residual tang. Because if you don't remove it, after you've pressed in the fret, you'll be able to see that little bit of residual tang on the side. I mean, it's not that big a deal, but if we can remove it, we might as well. But then I'll double check to make sure that it's going to line up in there correctly, which it is. And then I will place that into my little handy fret organizer. And I'm just going to continue with the same process. And I'll clip off the second length of fret wire. Clip the tang. The tang does shoot out of it, so it helps to tip it sideways so that the tang will fall into the trash can. And then I will and I always will double check this, because if for some reason I didn't clip off enough of the tang and it doesn't fit in there, I'll have a problem trying to press the frets in. So I'll just continue clipping the frets to length and clipping off the tangs and getting them ready. Okay, so I've got all my frets cut to size and all the tangs nipped, and they're ready to be installed. So the first insert that I'm going to install is going to be the 10-inch radius, and that is going to be used to press in the first frets from about the first fret probably to, I'm thinking maybe the 7th or 8th fret, probably the 7th. Now, a lot of times folks will say that when you apply CA glue into a slot, it's going to soak into the wood, and therefore it's not as effective a way to glue the frets into the slot. However, even though this is thin CA glue, it's not going to get sucked into the wood. It's actually going to be suspended between the sides of the slot, and it will stay there. And it would take probably 30 minutes to an hour for it to dry and cure. So I've got plenty of working time when I apply the CA glue into that slot. And I'm just using this little applicator, and it does a great job of just putting the glue right where I want it. And there it's just sitting in that slot. It's not soaking into the wood. So then I'll grab my first fret, and I'm going to just finger press it into place, and I'll place it onto my fret press, and I will bring the fret press down. This is kind of a challenge because it is a fan fret guitar, so getting the call in the right position can be kind of a challenge. And then I just press it down in, and I'll hold it here for about 10 seconds, long enough for the glue to tack up. And there it is pressed down in. so I can move on to the next fret. Okay, so now I'm about to do the 7th fret, but what I think I'm going to do is change the insert from a 10-inch radius to a 12-inch radius. Now from the 13th fret up to probably the 18th fret, I'm going to switch to the 14-inch radius insert. Now I have a little bit of a challenge because my clamping caul, or my fret press caul, doesn't extend under the heel, and I need to support the heel. So I'm going to have to place a piece of wood over this part so that I have something to rest it on as I press it down in. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a piece of scrap padauk right here to serve as a support. And I am going to change the insert from the 14-inch radius to a 16-inch radius. And then I think I'm going to flip this around. It's a little easier for me to do it this way. And that is the last fret, 24 frets. And as you can see on some of the frets, there is CA glue that is on the surface of the frets from pressing it in. That's no big deal. When I get to the crowning and dressing stage, that'll clean up really easily. I could also wipe it down with some acetone if I wanted to, but that might affect the finish that I put on the fretboard itself. So I'll probably just take it off when I polish the frets later. Now, whenever I do videos where I show the installation of frets, folks will invariably ask me, how do I avoid glue squeeze out onto the fretboard? And because I'm using a fine applicator tip on my CA glue bottle, I typically don't get any squeeze out. But there, I mean, it could happen, and it does occasionally on maybe 1 or 2 frets. And what I'll often do is just reach for, this is just a simple 1/8 inch wide chisel. They aren't really common, but you can find them if you search for them. And what I'll do is I'll take one of those sharp pointed corners on the tip, and I'll place that right up against where the fret meets the fretboard. And then I'll lift the other corner off the fretboard, and I'll just bring it along that fret, scraping off any glue that might be squeezing out onto the fretboard. But as is the case with this particular neck, I only had a couple of frets that had any visible squeeze out. The rest of them are pretty clean. Now, like I said, there is some CA glue on top of the frets, but it's very minimal and should clean up pretty easily later on. All right, so now I've got one last chore to do for this particular video, and that is I need to trim off some of the excess fret where it's extending beyond the sides of the fretboard. So I'm just going to take my Hosco fret nippers and do my best to clip some of that off. I'm not terribly concerned about it because later on I'm going to bevel the ends of these frets. So I'll be removing more material, but using the Hosco nippers at this stage will make that part of the process later on significantly easier. Okay, there's still a lot more work to be done on the frets, but most of that work can be done later on. What I can do now is I can set the neck aside and start working on the body. And that's going to be really interesting because since this is a multi-scale guitar, the pickups that I'm going to be installing, which will be humbuckers, are totally custom made. And that means the pocket that I'm going to be routing into the body is a different shape than what you normally would expect to see when using traditional humbuckers on a 6-string guitar. So be sure to check that out. And as always, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If so, please click that thumbs up button down below. Click the thanks button, leave a tip. Visit eguitarplants.com, my Highline Guitars merch store. Do all that good stuff. And until the next episode, take care, stay safe, and I hope you'll be back for the continuing adventures of building this 6-string multi-scale fan fret guitar.